My name is Sarah, and 5 days before the most dangerous surgery of my life, my husband's family walked into my hospital room like they owned the place. They didn't knock. They didn't call. They just walked in, and what happened next would expose a secret I had kept from everyone I loved for 11 years. I want you to imagine lying in a hospital bed, waiting for a heart surgery with a 40% survival rate, and the last thing you need is chaos. But chaos is exactly what walked through that door. Let me back up. My name is Sarah Reyes. I'm 42 years old. For the last 11 years, I've been married to a man named James, and for 11 years, his family has treated me like I was never good enough for him. Not rich enough, not polished enough, not from the right side of town. I never argued with them. I never defended myself. I just smiled, paid for things quietly, and let them believe whatever they wanted to believe about me. James never knew the real reason I stayed silent. Nobody did, but that was about to change, because in 5 days, I was scheduled for open heart surgery and my odds weren't good. The night before everything fell apart, I was lying in that hospital bed, hooked up to monitors trying to steady my breathing, when I heard heels clicking down the hallway. I knew that sound. It was James's mother, Diane. And right behind her, James's brother, Daniel, and his wife, Vanessa. They didn't ask if they could come in. They didn't ask how I was feeling. Diane walked straight to the foot of my bed, crossed her arms, and said the words that would change everything. "We need to talk about the will." I remember blinking at her, genuinely stunned. I hadn't even gone into surgery yet. My heart was barely holding together, and this woman was standing over me talking about inheritance. Vanessa chimed in next, her voice syrupy sweet, the kind of sweet that always meant something ugly was coming. She said, "Sarah, we just want to make sure James is protected. In case anything happens to you. In case anything happens to me." Like I was already gone. Like my body was still warm, but they'd already started dividing up what I left behind. I asked them to leave. Calmly. I told them this wasn't the time. But Diane wasn't finished. She leaned in close, and what she said next made my blood run cold. "We know about the hospital bill, Sarah. $62,000. James can't afford that. So maybe it's time you admit you're not the provider you pretend to be." I felt my heart rate spike. I could hear the monitor beeping faster beside me. Because here's the thing. Here's what none of them knew. Here's what James himself didn't even know. I own this hospital, not a wing of it, not a donation plaque with my name on it. I own the entire building, the land beneath it, and 40% of the medical group that runs it. I bought my first stake in this hospital system 9 years ago, quietly, through a holding company that didn't carry my name. I did it on purpose. I didn't want James to marry a bank account. I wanted him to marry me. But now, 5 days before a surgery I might not survive, his family was standing in my room, mocking me over a bill I could pay 1,000 times over without blinking. And I realized I had a choice to make. Keep hiding who I was, or let the truth come out, even if it changed everything. If you're watching this and you've ever had to sit quietly while someone underestimated you, hit that subscribe button right now, because what happens next is going to feel like justice, finally, catching up to people who never saw it coming. Diane wasn't done. She turned to James, who had just walked in holding 2 coffees, completely unaware of what he'd walked into. Diane said, "Sweetheart, we think it's time you consider your options. This woman can't even cover her own medical bills. What happens if the surgery goes wrong and you're left with all this debt?" James looked at me, confused, hurt, and for the first time in 11 years, I saw a flicker of doubt in his eyes. Not doubt in me. Doubt in the life he thought he understood. That was the moment I decided enough was enough. I asked Daniel to hand me my phone from the nightstand. My hands were shaking, partly from the medication, partly from something else entirely. I opened an email, one I'd been sitting on for years. An email from the hospital's board of directors confirming my ownership, stake, and my seat as a silent partner in the medical group. I turned the phone around and asked Diane to read it out loud. She squinted at the screen. Her face changed first, then Vanessa's, then Daniel's. The room went completely silent except for the steady beep of my heart monitor. Diane's voice cracked when she finally spoke. This says you're on the board. This says you own the building." I nodded, and then I said the words I had waited 11 years to say. "I don't just own part of this hospital. I own the account that generated your grandson's emergency room bill last spring, the one Vanessa quietly asked me to help cover, remember? I own the parking, structure you've complained about for a decade because you thought it was too expensive. And yes, Diane, I own the bill you just humiliated me over 5 minutes ago. James hadn't said a word this whole time. He just stood there, coffee cup still in his hands, staring at me like he was meeting me for the first time. I turned to him and my voice softened. I didn't hide this to lie to you, James. I hid it because I wanted you to love the woman, not the money, and every single day you did. That's the only reason any of this mattered to me. But this story wasn't over, because pride is a strange thing, and Diane wasn't ready to admit defeat just yet. She straightened her jacket and said, well, if you really own all this, then prove it. Prove you're not just some con artist playing dress-up with fake documents. That's when the door opened again. This time it wasn't a nurse. It was Marcus Chen, the hospital's chief administrator, a man I had personally worked with for years, though always through lawyers and intermediaries, always staying in the shadows. He walked in, shook my hand, and said, Mrs. Reyes, the board wanted me to check on you personally before tomorrow's procedure, given everything you've done for this facility's expansion. Diane's face went pale. Vanessa took a step back. Daniel suddenly found something very interesting to look at on the floor. The administrator continued, completely unaware of the storm he'd just walked into. He mentioned the new pediatric wing, funded almost entirely through my holding company. He mentioned the surgical equipment upgrades from 2 years ago. He mentioned, casually, that the surgeon performing my operation tomorrow was hand-selected by me, flown in from Cleveland, one of the best cardiac surgeons in the country. The family that had spent 11 years treating me like an outsider was now standing in a room I owned, being treated to a private audience with the hospital's chief administrator, who spoke about me the way you'd speak about someone who mattered. After he left, the silence in that room was heavier than anything I'd ever felt. Diane sat down slowly in the corner chair. Vanessa wouldn't make eye contact. My brother-in-law just kept apologizing over and over to absolutely no one. James finally spoke. He walked to my bedside, took my hand, and asked the only question that mattered to him. Why didn't you tell me? I told him the truth. I told him about growing up watching my own mother get judged by every dollar in her pocket, instead of the woman she was. I told him I built this life quietly, because I wanted just one person in the world to choose me for me. And he did. Every single day for 11 years, he chose me. Diane tried to salvage the moment. She started talking about family, about how blood matters, about how she only wanted what was best for her son. But James, for the first time in over a decade, cut his own mother off. He said, You didn't come here for family, Mom. You came here for money. And you nearly destroyed something real because you couldn't see past a bank statement. The room emptied out slowly after that. Diane left without another word. Vanessa mumbled something about visiting again soon, though we both knew that wasn't true. My brother-in-law just left, quiet and small, the way guilty people often do. That night before my surgery, James crawled into the narrow hospital bed beside me, careful of all the wires and monitors, and rested his head against my chest. He whispered, I don't care what you own. I just care that you wake up tomorrow. The surgery happened 5 days later, exactly as scheduled. 6 hours on the table, a 40% survival rate. But I woke up, and when I opened my eyes, James was the first face I saw, holding my hand the same way he had every single day of our marriage, whether I was a silent partner or simply the woman he fell in love with. Diane never fully apologized. Some people never do, but she never walked into a room like that again without asking first. And Vanessa learned, the hard way, that greed has a way of exposing itself at the worst possible moment. As for me, I finally stopped hiding, not because I wanted recognition, but because I realized protecting the truth had cost me almost as much as revealing it would have. Sometimes the people who doubt you the most are standing closer to the truth than they ever imagined, and sometimes justice doesn't come from revenge. It comes from finally being seen. If this story hit you the way it hit me writing it down, subscribe and stay till the end, because the next story we're telling might just be the one that changes how you see the people closest to you.